So good to see you all. Let's start with a moment of appreciation for each other and ourselves, taking this time, looking at each of our spaces, feeling each other with appreciation or gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for doing that with me or for us doing that for each other. Yeah. I'm excited about our exploration today. I always am when I see you. I get excited and love exploring the Dharma with you. I thought I'd start with just a very simple drawing that might indicate, that in the realm of emotions, we have that are considered in the cat family of sadness. We might have sadness here, and has a certain intensity, and it can go higher and lower. And then we might say, just what may be a deeper kind of emotional pain that's more acute. And then we might say like the effects of just feeling depressed. And then we might even say here and grief. So, at least in the way I'm regarding this family of deities in the sadness family, they go from everything from sad joy or bittersweet mono no aware, the beautiful sadness, which is pretty much joy and tenderness combined with sweet sadness, and it can increase in its sour and sweet combination until it's more and more sour sadness, and then more and more tangy. It could get to just being so painful to accommodate. And when emotion reaches pain threshold, which, I'm talking physiologically, right? Isn't this fascinating? We think of emotions as, oh no, it's all experiential or mental or whatever construct we have. No, it's literally physical. It's just like any other pain. And there's all these studies that now show this or whatever. But we knew that before they did that. So emotional pain, and then emotional pain when not metabolized, when not being able to accommodate the intensity of what we need to feel to be whole again, to go through the journey and the wisdom of the emotion, which we'll talk about. If that doesn't happen, it goes into depression sometimes. And there's different kinds of depression, right? There's chronic depression, which is a whole nother bird, and then there's just shorter term depression. But then grief, I put almost like in a special category, because from what I understand in my own experience, is it's not possible, nor should it be, for an individual to go through that entire level of grief alone. It can't be done. It's a social, it needs some kind of distributed feeling. Because if we try to go through grief, which is defined in my case, in this case today, as a traumatic, sudden, or even somewhat gradual, but traumatic shift in your world, the loss of a child, the loss of a partner, the loss of a family member, a death of an animal, the ending of a marriage. There's many great big things that can shake your assumptive reality and the foundation of your being, to the point where the energy is bigger than, it's one way of saying it, or the energy requires social witnessing for its full healing. Now, it doesn't mean any one thing, and it's interesting, we can talk about that. Sometimes people say grief requires ritual, social ritual, beyond just ourselves, right? And so it's just interesting to think of an emotion that's bigger than the individual. Take a moment and think about that. What does that mean? How can does it mean the emotion wasn't just yours? Does it mean that the emotion was also the lost person and your person's energy combined? And that you, since you weren't all of that, how could you possibly heal all of that? Maybe that's one way of looking at it. But it requires tending and deep love and bravery. And I will say, with the diagram I just gave, of course, fear is part of the game here, because once we hit the pain threshold, even before that sometimes, we are afraid of our own emotions. We're afraid of our own heart and mind, and we respond in our nervous system in kind. So it's important to do this work when we feel safe enough to kind of work with emotions intentionally. If we're feeling activated and over flooded and loaded, maybe be gentler than you would be, less macho, more, give yourself some space. Whatever ways you cope and deactivate a little, maybe that's not bad right now. You have to honor yourself, right? Because in the end of the day, having tried it the other way, it simply doesn't work. It's like, when you're at the gas pump and you keep going and the thing goes, and it stops and you go more, and you go more, and it's like trying to do that until you just get gas coming out of the tank onto the floor on your shoes. You're like, and then you might as well just take it out and start pouring it on yourself. I mean, what are you doing? It doesn't. That's not how it works, right? So we can't do that. We can, but it doesn't work. Or it gets really messy and you might catch on fire. Or blow up your entire gas station. So who knows? Just don't do that. Trying to be funny about something that's kind of heavy. It's natural, right? But the humor also connects with the level of intensity, that there's also fear in touching these painful emotions. So let's just honor our bravery. All right. So I have a number of things to share with you, presentations, little things that I think will help us. And to start with, I thought, rather than me paraphrasing someone I adore in this kind of work, Megan Devine, she's an incredible psychologist and grief counselor, and I want to meet her. I want to take her out to a coffee. I want to talk to her, because she discovered some of the exact same things that I feel I discovered in social meditation, which is, and many other people discovered in other disciplines, but that isn't yet quite mainstreamed in our culture. This idea that maybe you could even say Bernie Glassman Roshi's work with witnessing, bearing witness. A lot of people have discovered this, but it's still on the fringes, which is, it's enough to just hold space for grief. That if we're the one accommodating someone else, if the emotion is too big for one person, then our job is to do nothing but be in our nature, which means our mirror neurons will be online and we will feel what they are feeling to the degree we can handle it. To the degree that we can hold that space and feel what they're feeling, that's our nature, to feel each other completely unblocked, with no obstruction, completely just feeling. It's one feeling, one heart, as the Hopi say, or the Rastafari, right? It's just one love, one heart. That's all there is. So indigenous wisdom traditions know this. Bodhicitta is the one heart. The ultimate empty, luminous nature and relative love are the same thing. Same thing. So when someone's in deep pain and we just are there, we lose control. If we're really brave and we just go into the darkness with them. And we do nothing. We just hold their hand, or we just are next to them. We gaze at them. We feel what they're feeling. That is the highest form of compassion when it comes to grief. And it's counterintuitive, because we live in a society where people are like, I have to do something, right? I remember in one social meditation circle we had, this young man was sharing, I went to see my friend, she has cancer, and her husband was there, and I went in the room, and she's, maybe dying, and I was like trying to say things, and at some point, I just stopped talking, and I dropped, I felt defeated, like I couldn't do anything, and he trailed off. And we were all just holding space for him. It was such a fascinating moment, right? And he was like, yeah, I guess this is, basically this is all you can do, or this is what's needed. And it's a devastating insight to the mother with no arms in the Buddhist tradition, standing by the river with the baby. You cannot take away someone's grief any more than you can take away their wisdom. They're entwined. They're the same thing. You can't take grief as it's our true nature expressing appropriately as deep pain. There's nothing wrong with deep pain. Okay, so I couldn't help but saying a little bit of my view about this, but now I want to play for you what Megan Devine said, because it's things that I've said almost verbatim, but she has a beautiful and interesting and amazing way of saying it that she has her own magic, of course, but I feel so connected to what she says. So I'll share, this is from a podcast, and I'll share just a few minutes of audio of her speaking about grief, and in particular, how people who can't bear witness, who can't stay in the feeling, what that feels like and what happens there. It's really, and how the spiritual traditions are sometimes co-opted by us to try to make us superhuman and not feel, and that's not really genuine. That's not, and we'll explore that more. But okay.
But you can control how you respond to it, and one of the reasons you're feeling this way is because of you or your practice or your behaviors or your assumptions.
Yeah.
And so if you would just change this, or if you had done things better, you wouldn't be in such a dark place.
That's right. If you would just change your thoughts, Pumpkin, everything would be fine, and you would know that everything is just exactly as it needs to be.
Did you hear a lot of that?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's really a testament to my previous practice that I did not punch more people. Yeah, it's really, it's so pervasive. And I was talking with somebody here in town about this the other day, that all of that stuff is really the puritanical blame model put into New Eastern clothing.
Take me more into that.
Yeah. So that sort of early religious idea that if things aren't going well for you, you're not good enough, you're not following the scriptures enough, you're not pleasing God. And if you are pleasing God and you're doing everything you're supposed to do and bad shit happens, well, then your reward is later, right? Like there's never any acknowledgement or okayness about the fact that life goes sideways sometimes. So you take that sort of puritanical blame model where if something is going wrong, you caused it, you displeased God. And we put that into, whether it's pop psychology or pseudo-Eastern philosophy, that if your thoughts create your reality. I actually had people tell me that I created Matt's death with my thoughts. Really? I'm that powerful? I am really fucking powerful, but I am not that powerful. And what about everybody else's thoughts who loved him? What about his own thoughts? Can we give him some autonomy and sovereignty over his own life? Right? So inside that is still that if something is going wrong in your life or something is painful, you somehow caused this. And that it's happened and you are so upset, that shows how not developed you are and how not deep you are. I have really, really good hearing. And the number of times I heard people say, wow, she must not have been very stable before this happened if she's this upset now. Really? It's incredible. The kind of things we say to each other and to ourselves when we're in pain. It's intensely cruel and it's wrong.
I wonder if behind somebody saying that about you to somebody else is their own fear.
No, it's existential terror.
Right, because if they want to imagine that if they, God forbid, ever are in that same position, that they wouldn't be that unhinged. And the possibility that you are them and they could end up going there is too much to handle.
Absolutely.
So instead they judge you as being other.
Totally. I have a theory that is not yet scientifically proven, but the more unusual, random, or out of order the death, the more judgment the grieving person hears, right? Because if this can happen to Matt and I and our family and our world, here's this strong, incredibly skilled, powerful man who walks into a river he's walked into 1,000 times and drops dead, right? Anything can happen. That could be me. And we have that limbic resonance, right? Like our bodies recognize how fragile we are. And this could be me. Like, my child could disappear. My partner could not come home from work today, right? We hear about that stuff. And instead of letting that poignancy in, one of my favorite teachers used to say poignancy is kinship. And I love that. But we don't let poignancy be kinship. We feel that come into us and we go, oh shit, that could be me. So let me see what they did wrong, right? The only news story that I read after Matt died, I was never a news person anyway, but I read one news story that actually blamed him for his death because he was not wearing a life jacket. What grown-up do you know wears a life jacket to go swimming? No. You read the comments section under any accidental death or earthquake or any of these things, and the comments are largely full of blame. What did they do wrong? They weren't wearing their seatbelt. They didn't eat right. They didn't exercise enough. They exercised too much. Blame, 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 blame. It's our way of otherizing. It's our way of giving distance so that this can't be me. And if we can't say like, oh, I wouldn't do all of those things so I'd be safe, if this did happen to me, I would deal with it much better than you were dealing with it. What we're doing is we're distancing ourselves from annihilation. We're hoping that we would survive. What's really called for there is silence.
Maybe in listening to that, you bring to mind some of your own grief, or to the degree you feel up to that mountain of feeling. And I liked how she was speaking about, we say these things to ourselves too, right? It might be other people unable to let themselves mirror because it's too scary, which I definitely experienced in my life. But that said, what we do to ourselves, right? We evade, we turn away, we shame ourselves, we criticize ourselves, we say, why am I not over this yet? What's wrong with me? So I thought we could just take a moment with any kind of sadness or grief in your life that you'd like to befriend, and this practice starts that you're feeling relatively safe, and from that space we turn towards the feeling with a sense of contentment or well-being. We turn towards a difficult feeling, a difficult episode in our life. It could be from a long time ago or recent. Again, be mindful of how intense what you're choosing to engage with is. This is not necessarily the time to try the most difficult thing, but it's up to you. But the idea is just we're learning a skill together, we're exploring an approach together. So turning towards. You could say, if you've been running, turning around. And here we practice silence of just noticing judgment and letting it go and letting it be there and not adding to it. So we're non-judgmentally in silence, turning towards or turning around to look at the feeling, feel the feeling without judgment. If we're flooded by thought reactions, we just notice them as part of the space, come back to the space of the room, space of your body, and come back to just gentle, bearing witness, silence, and holding space for the feeling. Again and again. Depending on the moment in your life, your practice right now, or the way your channels are right now in your subtle body, you might already be moving to the second step, which is opening your heart to what yourself and what you feel. Opening the heart, not just being non-judgmental, but letting yourself be almost loving towards this experience, or completely open-hearted and touched by the experience. If that feels difficult, just go back to the first stage and stay with that. Opening the heart to your grief in this stage means we're not judging it, but we're also even going further, and we're letting it touch us with so much tenderness and acceptance. Understanding, love and understanding about why we feel what we feel without any judgment, comparison, anything like that. We let go, returning to just this open-heartedness. You can even place your hand on your heart if that's helpful. This is also, you could say, a kind of benevolence. Just allowing ourselves to be touched by what we feel without comparison, shaming, or judgment, or letting go of those eclipses and just coming back. What does it mean to regard this emotion as a deity, as a Jala, as a wisdom formation? Something that has its own intelligence and wants to be seen. Our own heart wants to be seen by itself. And it's the loneliest thing. But it feels like camaraderie too. Okay, now we could come back to each other for a moment, just looking, seeing each other. Appreciation. I got you, you got me, we got each other. If you have trouble, connecting, so that's amazing information. That's part of our path. That means there's other messengers, the gatekeeper thoughts in us, trying to deactivate a little, saying, yeah, not right now, or I don't know. Suddenly, this is so interesting. I'm really discursive. I wasn't 5 minutes ago. It's like, just notice that. That's beautiful. That's good information. There's a journey here. It's not like you just teleport. You have to walk through the castle, and there's sometimes gatekeepers, and they're like, nope, nice try. So you gotta negotiate with this. Is why I sometimes talk about the emotions as deities, like as if to respect that they're not under the control of our sixth consciousness, our thinking mind. They're just not. They're like, sucker, you couldn't lift me if you tried. It's like a mountain and a little ant going, I'm gonna pick you up. It's like they're like, good, go ahead, ant. It's like, I'm doing it. Yeah, I can tell. Nothing's happening. So Before we move on, I just wonder what was that
Could
like?
you talk more about seeing emotion as a deity?
Yes. Sometimes we anthropomorphize deities, give them human forms, but other times we could think of them as expressions of wisdom that are almost entity. Like in indigenous cultures where they have animism, right? Everything is alive, everything has a spirit, right? And I think maybe in the modern world, with our emphasis on materialism and all the wonderful scientific developments along that kind of Newtonian thinking, there's, kind of got disproven, right? But another way of looking at animism is like, no, you don't have to look at it as if it's a physical thing, because that's already a big mistake to take the materialist lens on something that was never materialist, but that's another story. But no, just like feel into the idea that what if anger is a deity that's trying to teach us that we need a boundary? What if depression is a deity trying to tell us that our life force can't keep going the way it is? We need to change something in our life. What if, jealousy is a deity that says we're feeling anxious because we haven't been able to communicate our boundaries and needs, but we do want something, And, what if pride is like a message that we're feeling really insecure and it comes along to boost us up? But instead of looking at pathologizing, I've been talking a lot about pathologizing or pathology, and I'm not saying there isn't therapeutic response to dis-ease. I mean, the whole Buddhist model is one of therapy, right? Symptom, cause, cure, medicine. It's a Vedic just diagnosis of therapy or medicine. But it's pathologizing. The problem with it is that, as we've been discussing in the last few months, the levels of identity we have, the complexity of their interrelationship, the brilliance of our subtle body and our nature, it defies solidifying one particular simple facet about our whole experience. So within the facets, fine to pathologize and know that you're pathologizing and saying, yeah, this is just a way of talking about a problem I have. But when we look at all the facets, any single pathology becomes yet another facet, right? Anytime we pathologize, just another facet. And now we're like, wait, we're not really dealing with reality. We're dealing with shaping our reality through a lens that has a lot of assumptions in it. It's deciding something that we might not be examining. It's an unexamined assumption to go to pathology. So what we do is we go to the emotion itself and say, what's your wisdom? You're a wisdom deity. You're a drala. You're a spirit. You've come to me with a message. Don't shoot the messenger, right? So anger's, and this is in the work, I think, of, oh gosh, I forgot her name already. Another one of my heroes. Janet, do you remember?
Carla McLaren.
Thank you. You're my heroine. Carla McLaren did all this amazing work and research. And again, there's podcasts if you want to go more into this. I use the idea of drala or deity because that's how it hits me and what I'm teaching. But she talks about it that there are no positive or negative emotions. None. They're all just messages. They're survival messages. They're intelligence of our system. And I'm like, whoa, that is fucking game changing, right? Because it's like, it goes along with parts theory. There's different developmental stages in parts of us, but it's perfectly synthesized with that also each emotion has wisdom in itself. Wow. So, yeah, thank you for that. Lynn.
There's a discussion about anger and even striking out in anger. And while that was happening, the thunder was rolling in and roaring, and there was lightning striking around at the same time.
Oh my, dralas of interdependence and the elements. Wow. And that's the brilliance of being a romantic that is in touch with reality. We're not, it's like the South American great authors, Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Pablo Neruda, when they were told they were magical realists by the northern writers of the northern hemisphere, and they said, no, we're just talking about reality. So it really is this question of how do we look at things creates our reality. Our reality is created by our culture, and here our culture says, the thunder happening at that time, that's magic. That is the whole thing working together. And it connects us to what we are really all connected, right? Anyway, come on. So what's the point in pretending that's not connected? You could say it's not, but it doesn't make you more whole, and it doesn't make you more disconnected. So it's sort of like choose your facet, but I like the being a part of things in the magic kind of quality. So yeah, looking at emotions as these messengers or dralas or deities, we also then develop a sense of respect that they really do have their own life force. And I believe emotions are messengers that need to be, the relationship needs to be fulfilled and fulfill its potential. The emotion needs to fulfill its potential. If we stunt the arc of arising, spreading, existing, radiating, resolving, and transmuting into something else, if we stop that natural process, which I call metabolizing emotion, if we don't allow emotions to have their own life cycle, what happens? Well, we know they go into the body, they go into disease, they cause stress, they cause inflammation, they cause serious problems. They could lead to chronic major depression, all sorts of things, blocked channels, blocked energy, a stuck life, because we're so afraid of letting them express themselves. And they really are. They're right. Emotions are essentially, I'm saying they're dralas or deities because we should regard them as having as much autonomy from our conscious mind, that they have their own needs, their own wisdom, and their own journey. Now, I'm not saying that this is also tricky. I'm not saying that they're also separate from us, right? That might sound dualistic, like the emotions are them and we're the, well, no, we're also all one. So again, it's this crazy symbol, tons of facets, all one, all at the same time, right? No problem. Just remember this. So it's both. It's a paradox. They have their own life and they are us. It's wild.
I just wanted, when you were talking about facets, that I was reminded as I was reflecting on a painful situation that I felt I've grieved a lot.
Yeah.
But a new facet came up that I didn't even know I had suppressed because it was too much to deal with.
I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for the wisdom facet coming from you to us. This is crucial. I talk about metabolizing emotions, but let's be clear. They keep reincarnating or arising. They aren't, just because you go through it and feel it and it transmutes into the next stage, it's still there. In other words, my belief is that our grief doesn't need to go away, and it doesn't necessarily go away. Emotions don't go away. I think we have this feeling as if we just were linear enough and we metabolized and felt enough, they'd be done. But guess what? Just like everything else, they come in cycles and they're like, you're like, what? But I did that. I felt you. And they're like, yeah, I got my own reality here. And it's so, for me, a big part of healing grief is, and I think if you do go ahead and listen to more of, Megan Devine, she does an amazing job pointing out that they don't need to go away. Your grief doesn't have to go anywhere. It's going to be with you. I think for me, I find new layers of grief all the time, Lynn. Thank you for pointing out that once you go metabolize one layer or one facet of an emotion, it reincarnates at its next level of depth. Like what else? What doesn't, right? So for example, for myself, I had a blockage. In my divorce, I had a blockage around, I want to get through this pain. And the breakthrough I made in that was when I said, oh no, my sweetheart, my ex, I will always love her. I will always be broken about it. And that will never go away. That's part of who I am now. Oh, and I was like, oh, good. That's in my heart. I have a beautiful, wounded, broken heart that I take with me that starts to then shine its own light from its own ember. and it becomes mono no aware more, because I'm not fighting. If I'm trying to get rid of it, I get angry at its glow and its heat. If I say, oh no, you can be there, you're going to be part of my story, you're going to be part of who I am now, suddenly the energy moved in the channels. But then there were different layers of grief that need to be processed, right? Like other stuff was like, I was waiting till you got through that. This is it's like there's this loudspeaker, number 300,843, you are up. 300,843, 300,844, 3,000, like you might not hear the call, and you might, almost going to come back in a year. They forgot to get they didn't get driven to the appointment. This stuff has its own perfect cosmic bureaucracy, right? You don't get to skip anything. Or if you do, it just comes back later. So I thought that's interesting that it's both that you can metabolize it, but then it's reborn with different layers, and it's part of our story, and because we're one with it. Right? It's like you can't get rid of the emotion because you can't get rid of the wisdom, because it's your nature. It's not a problem that you have grief. Our society thinks it is, but our society is sick. The truth is, it's just beautiful to have a journey of being a human and fully feel what we feel, so that we can learn from it, and then new layers come and more layers. Again, this strange idea that we superimpose on spiritual paths of there's an end. And I think I've talked about this with some of you. I think Sonia and I were talking about this recently. It was like, maybe it was Sonia, and I think it was, where it was like, I don't know if I'd begin if I knew that. So maybe it's good in the beginning to have a provisional. Is that right, Sonia?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's like, it's too much to hear that up front, right? It's like, oh my God, it never ends, and it just keeps, why would I bother? And it's like, well, because there's more and more freedom. And once you have new realizations, you get new problems. And it's just wonderful, right? Hallelujah. And new problems equal new joys. And it's just the endless journey of expressing. The true nature is infinite, and it just keeps expressing its majesty with every new unfolding. So why wouldn't we want to go with it and be evolving? Because that's really its nature, is natural intelligence, natural growth. When we fight that, we stagnate, and then we're like, I only want the problems I have, and I keep them very close. No, it's okay. It's okay.
I forgot I was on.
That's great. I love it.
I wanted to share with you that I always use a diagram when I'm talking to people about grief.
Really?
And I can't find it right now. I was shuffling, but I don't know where it is. And I drew like a little jar, and then you have your grief, and it fills up the jar. Yeah. And the next jar is a little larger, but the grief is still the same size. And then a third jar that's big, and the grief is floating in there. So that the emotion always stays with you. It's always the same intensity and pain, but your life enlarges around it. I find it helpful.
That is one for the archives. Thank you, Lori. That is a great contribution, right? That's a beautiful framing. I love it. Thank you. Wow. That just feels so right to me, and so true.
This is sort of like that, but also sort of different, and it connects with what you were saying. For me anyway, about like never stepping on the spiritual path if we knew where we were, going to ultimately have to go. It's like there are, losses and not only losses of things that I had, but losses in the sense of I didn't have that. Mm. That were just too painful to grieve at the time.
Yes.
So I feel like those kind of keep coming back up in different relationships. And as I get, you know, stronger and my capacity, my jar gets more spacious, I can take off another layer and start to see how, oh, I'm feeling that way in this relationship, or interpreting a behavior this way because of that. And those connections and those realizations have their own time, like their own agenda, just like, you know, like they that's part of their deityness.
Mm. Mm. That's beautiful, Janet. Beautiful. I love that. I love it, and I think that's been my experience too. Right, that these things come up, that unprocessed grief, which is like, actually, to me, that's okay that there's unprocessed. It's not like that's, oh, you're not doing it right. I don't mean it that way. There will be unprocessed grief at different stages or times. Period. It's not a bad thing. It's just to notice, and we're working with that. But it does come out. And one of the things that's so sad is that we live in a society that doesn't have ritual or social, cultural understanding of the capacity of to just be in silence with someone's deepest pain. So we have that culture through each other, and social meditation is that culture, right? It's one way of doing it, where it's culturally acceptable to just hold space. Now, why is that so important? Well, because the ground of our being is oneness, and our mirror neurons, when we're safe enough, we feel each other, right? Completely. We are, there's nothing in between. We're in the same space. When we have a practice of, oh, I can just be in this, and I can stay in relationship and stay connected, you know, cultures that have that. I'm looking something up because you might know it too, but you know the I see you phrase in Zulu? Oh, sawubona. That's right, sawubona. Here, I'll type it in. It's a good one. Sawubona. You know, in South African Zulu, that sometimes people translate as the divinity in me sees the divinity in you, which is beautiful. Or, you know, my true nature sees your true nature. But actually, it's more than that. In tribal culture, in the Zulu, it meant, I see you in all, warts and all your beauty, all your nuances. I actually see you, and it's all good. It's okay. Like, I accept you, and you accept. That's what sawubona really means. Because it would be nice, all the divinity see you. It could be very new agey and kind of like bypassy even. No, I see all of your shit, and I love you. And I see that your shit isn't separate from your brilliance. And shit's a heavy word, but I see your struggles and your warts and all that. We all have our little quirks, whatever. But that, to truly feel accepted. And I remember achieving this with level of intimacy, which gave me great faith in that intimacy can deepen. And with my father, I definitely felt this. But also with my best friend, Matt, growing up. We know each other now for 41 years. When we were 7, we met. And I remember when we got to the stage in our relationship where we started roasting each other. Like, ruthlessly. Like, we could insult each other better than anyone. But here's how you knew it came from love. Because every time we did it, the other one would start dying laughing, like feeling so safe that it was play, like, and we would be like, oh my God, I feel so loved. Because it was like, yeah, I see your nuttiness and I fucking love it. And I love you. And you can feel the difference, right? If someone's just insulting you, it's like, stop it. But when someone absolutely, and it's like a deeper level that's like very rare. It takes a lot of intimacy. But to have a social practice like we have, to mirror each other, right? To have the ground of our being not be denied as fluid and interpenetrative.
It's that wisdom that's discerning and discriminating in the, but it's not big J judgmental, which is a way of saying, yeah, you've got that kind of shit and I don't, you know.
Yes, Lynn. That's it. It's not a deactivation and an othering strategy. It's a belonging strategy. It's like you and I belong as each other. Like you're, and that's where the healing of what I mean by ritual when I talk about healing is just even say social meditation or a deep connection with a practitioner where you don't need to be. It's so rare that we're fully accepted in our culture. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, right? That's the sad thing. So we're creating a Sangha where we could try to practice that. But in order to do it, you can see why it doesn't happen, because if people can't accept their own emotions, they can't do you, because as soon as they open the gates, they're feeling shit they can't handle themselves. They might want to be compassionate with you. They might want to do it well, but they're like, I actually can't do this. And it's usually not that conscious, and it usually comes out as some kind of weird interruptive, injunctive shoulding and something, or advice giving that wasn't solicited, or something, it's like, I can't handle it, you should be better, fine, bye. Gotta go. So, yeah. Grief. Oh, and Janet, you just shared the Ubuntu. I am because we are, right? Yeah, the relational truth that we don't exist independently in the same way that we do as social beings. We couldn't be here without social interpenetration, right? It's such a paradox. We have our own journeys, but we also can't do it alone. Or it's strange to think of that. That's almost such a loaded phrase. What does that even mean? First off, we're never alone. We're always in interdependence, even if you're in a cave. So that's silly. What do you mean by alone? Secondly, we can't do it isn't even the point. We can do what we can, but it's like, that to me, that whole phrase, I get it, but it's almost like, it's so much deeper than that. It's like we are in this together.
Nick and I were just doing that back and forth, not realizing that.
Oh, I didn't know I was in the wrong chat.
Oh,
thank you, Janet. Thank you, Lori.
So I also noticed I was pretty recently with my grandson, who's a 12 going into 13-year-old, suffering so much, adolescent boy, and he was literally just kind of throwing himself around in pain and not particularly, he was pretty immersed in it and not realizing his effect on the people around him. And so here I'd just been with him a day and I started offering the corrections. Couldn't be with it. But thankfully, I guess because of my practice, I noticed him starting to pull away from me, which broke my heart and got through to me. It was a great message. And so I started just allowing him to be more and to be with my own sense of pain about it. And the difference it made. It really was very healing in our relationship.
Oh, Lynn, thank you. Damn, that's the real deal. That's the little practice we did, right? Turning towards and then opening one's heart to. That is what you did, right? You were turning away, understandably, and then you saw him turning away, and then you turned towards, and it's like, but I'm gonna, ouch, and Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. What a vivid example of literally doing this in relationship. Wow.
What about where
Okay.
the line
Let's,
is?
yeah. So, sorry.
What about where the line is, though, in terms of having a healthy boundary? Because, like, I know myself, if I'm with someone that I love, like, I will go with them to wherever they're going, to the abuse of myself or to the
Yes.
sacrifice of my health or my everything because I'm overly giving. So, like, I feel it's important to kind of address that aspect too, just because it's, you have to have, there's interdependence, but you have to respect and know that, like, we do all need to have some sort of a limit as well, because we're not trying to solve a problem. And it's just, I don't know, because I can see myself getting lost in another person, and then now I have way more of an issue in my own energy field that needs to be sorted, because I'm highly empathic, and sometimes it's hard for me to associate my feelings and separate them. So just wanted to ask that, in regards to all of this conversation.
Awesome. I'm so glad you did. I feel like that's the paradox we're walking in this case. There's a million, if it's almost like every facet is a paradox, you know, it's particular and it's part of the whole, right? And you can't resolve that paradox. And that's not because we're lacking skill. It's just can't be resolved. It doesn't need to be resolved, but it needs to be addressed. Like you're addressing it is so crucial, right? Because that's the other side of the coin, right? With all the relational work, how do you know what you feel? And having a boundary, it's interesting to think of boundaries as being able to develop the ability, which I'm constantly working on this, but to develop the ability to know what I need, because I can look at what someone else needs and try to go there, and I can get out of balance because I can be very comfortable just going, okay, I just feel them and I follow their cue. But then I start to drift, like there's a parts of me or aspects of me that aren't being met or cared for. And then certain kinds of strange things come up in me, that there is resistance to my over focus on other. So it is a self-regulating system if we're paying attention. Obviously, we're focused on the social healing of grief, but what about the individual healing too? Like, what is it that you need? And having healthy boundary, exactly. That's been a huge journey for me, especially because I feel like so much of the compassion teachings in Buddhism become, for us, very easily turned into, at least for myself, codependency, and just I'll be altruistic. Others are more important than me. I will think of them, and you know that was also my family of origin story. I was the pleaser, the youngest, you know, and all that. So I'm good at that. I kind of like it to a degree, until suddenly I realized, because I wasn't in touch with my boundaries or what I needed, I wasn't a clear enough reference point to others, and then they start to be able to harm my ability to function because I've empowered them to, and that's not good for them, and it's not good for me. And so there's a disconnect from the whole ecosystem having balance. So really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. I've actually, though, I have found it really interesting when people can practice this with me and actually go, like with my therapist, she does it, and some of my friends and you all, some at times, when you really see someone, when you're really seen by someone, you then can understand, oh, they like validate you. They're like, you know what, you must be so fucking hard. And they don't try to fix it, and they don't, you know, they just stay in that truth with you. That enables me, paradoxically again, to know my needs. So trippy, right? In that moment, I go, oh my God, I do need something, right? I couldn't see it until somebody said, I see you. And then suddenly I'm like, I see me too. It's that weird recognition that someone else validates something I'm feeling. Amongst a million stars and particles, they point out one star and I'm like, oh, that is there. And when I feel that star now, thanks for pointing it out, because I had a million, I didn't know which one to pick. Now that I feel that one, I'm like, oh my God, that's a part of my truth that I need to explore what it will mean for me to honor that. And it may look different than my previous behaviors, because obviously my previous behaviors, I didn't quite honor. So sometimes it's the blind spots we have that we need to honor, and we don't see them. So we need someone else to help us to see the thing we need for the boundary. Oh, it's so confusing. So I'm not trying to make it, I'm totally with what you said, completely. And I'm just laughing at how crazy circular it is. Like where it's, but being aware of when I've gone too far into, that's for me a huge practice right now. Let's take 7 minutes and then we're going to go into round 2. Okay? So I shared in the chat some lyrics of a song, a Radiohead song that I love. I wanted to share with y'all in terms of working with emotion like grief. If you have songs that, you rotate in your grief, it's funny to have like a playlist. It's a grief songs. Maybe it's a good project. Should you choose to, or maybe you already have it, but music, as we know, is profound vehicle of blessings and dharma. As far as I'm concerned, it's super powerful, and in our culture, I think I've been just feeling so glad that we utilize it. And obviously, there are many different songs that might feel differently. There's no right or wrong song for grief. It's what you feel, but I encourage you to honor that, and it's a great way to prime the heart and be able to kind of get in touch with emotion, right? Music just goes directly in, and that's so helpful. There's a lot of so I thought I'd just share a little bit about this particular song and my reason for sharing it, and then of course, if you want to share on the Voxer thread songs that you have found helpful in feeling. So this song is very interesting. It's it's like a 4-something minute song, 4 maybe 5. But it's very spacious, which I like, and it's very moody and emotional, and I love that. But the lyrics are very interesting. They're very spacious. Sleight of hand. Jump off the end. Into a clear lake. No one around, just dragonflies. Fly to the side. No one gets hurt. You've done nothing wrong. Slide your hand. Jump off the end. The water's clear and innocent. The water's clear and innocent. I mean, for me, this is like on par with like Rumi stuff, especially the way it's put together. It's just, for me, it's very powerful. But what I like, just to share briefly on the lyrics, like there's this sleight of hand is kind of this feel of our second gesture, right? Life is always vanishing. And it's kind of a sleight of hand game, right? Things are always changing. There's always that sleight of hand. Like I thought, as Trungpa Rinpoche said, I've been fool enough to think that I possess my own projections in the sadhana moment. Jump off the end, that's interesting, into a clear lake. I've always found jumping into water as a healing, as a surrender, as a birth, as a death, as a letting go, as a non-hesitating, as a fully living. So it's a powerful gesture for me. No one around. I love that. It's like, this isn't for show, right? I'm not doing this because what people will think of me or what my own identity might look through. No one around. This is pure. This is true romance. You're not doing it for it's no business deal. And then there's just dragonflies flying to the side. And in sense of nature, no one gets hurt. For me, that's like this vast mind, or vast being a part of everything. And then you've done nothing wrong. It's so interesting, like you haven't failed. Slide your hand, like move that gesture, jump off the end, and the water's clear and innocent. That quality of freshness, right? Of tender brokenheartedness. The water's clear and innocent. Reality is clear and innocent. It's not trying to hurt us. It's not gonna protect us from getting our heart broken. It's just like clear and innocent. It is it is how it is. It is as it is. So then I thought I'd just play this song, and then we can go from there, discuss more.
Jump off the end into a clear lake. No one around. Just
people work with music differently. For me, sometimes like I'll play a song over and over for a long time, kind of get into it, right? So if you like that, it's a really powerful meditation. You just get, like, you give maybe, you know, you get a little break and play it again, or sometimes I have it on loop, but I really get into it. I mean, I discovered that when I got into mixing my own music, you have to play it over and over. Then I was like, wait, this is really cool. Actually, like, I like this. It's a different way of listening. The more, it's also strange, even with these songs, like that one was a big one during the time of my divorce for me. It just happened to coincide that was a helpful song. But it changes over time and different listens. You feel different things. It can almost feel like, oh no, I don't feel the same way. I feel a new way. Or, you know, your relationship, like anything, can grow and change. But then sometimes I'll listen to it if I haven't, and I'm like, no, there's this like very powerful thing in there that shines like different facets based on my mood, right? So it's a wonderful thing to have a song as a friend through your grief. It's one of the skillful means.
Something incredibly powerful for me about that line, "You haven't done anything wrong," or however it goes.
You've done nothing wrong.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I kept coming back to in our first sort of little meditation, which was this lifelong sense that this wouldn't be happening if I had done it right, or if I was okay, or so just feeling I was just getting to the wisdom of that when he started talking again. Like, what's the wisdom of both the trying to figure out what I did wrong, and also I think what I was sort of getting to was there is nothing wrong.
When you were sharing, Janet, I just had this insight that was connected to what you were obviously sharing, how powerful that was, but also with what Sonia had said before the break about essentially what, one of the goals of individuation, right? To be able to be yourself and not be codependent. Not that you're not interdependent, it's a balance. But one of the things I realized is that I love you so much, and when you feel a lot of emotion, like, I want you to feel okay. I'm like, oh gosh, I want you, but I was just feeling you and just riding. And one of the things that's so powerful is that if we truly just hold space, we actually realize it's not ours to fix. It's not ours to control. And that is the individuation. So it's a paradox. To fully feel someone else is to fully feel yourself. It's not two different things. If I fully feel you and let it just unfold, I don't lose touch with that I can't change you. There's no way anyway. It doesn't work that way. And secondly, I can then go, oh, I can be you and be me and know, well, that's yours. I can't do it. This is mine. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's that. Both are there in the space. Does this make sense? Yeah. So in the moment of fully bearing witness, we don't lose connection with either ourself or the other. It becomes more clear when we don't alter anything. It's more painful too, because we feel we're out of control, but we also feel more connected because we were like actually not trying to control it.
And it's really powerful for me too, Nick. I love Radiohead, and I just find it really awesome that you're my teacher and you play it, you like it. So cool. But the other thing I love about this song, you know, just the idea of water and being in a natural environment like that where you can submerge yourself in that water and pure, clear, light water. It, you know, it takes me back to when I was younger and living in Austin, and we would go to the lake and we'd go skinny dipping in this beautiful Lake Travis. And it was just such a freeing, beautiful experience. And to get inside the water and go in the water is just, you know, it just brings back how much I love the water like that. And it does have such a healing effect and connecting, makes a connection for me. And I was having a hard time kind of getting into this grief before you played that song, and that really did it for me. And there's something in, like, it's beautiful too, of all the things I've gone through that have been very hard, or, you know, people that have been close to me that have died. But there's something along with that, there's something so beautiful that I guess maybe because I have at least experienced them in my life, or that there's, you know, that there's something that I'm still living with that is part of them inside me. One last thing I want to show you. If I can find
She's so tiny. Oh, that's her foot. What is her tail? What's her face? Oh, that she had a little head sticking out of a blanket. Okay. Oh my God, that was amazing. Yeah, the term abhisheka, which is the Sanskrit word for empowerment, literally means to sprinkle and anoint. Sprinkling, and it has to do with bathing the Buddha. When the Buddha was born, bathing, you know, put in, and you know, in Christianity of the baptism, right, going into the water, and you know, in the healing power of water and the depth of that feminine energy that goes forever and that could feel endless grief, you know, and is not afraid. It is it. It is. It's like the depths, you know, and so there's so much symbolism. Of course, the being in the your mother's belly, being in where we begin in the water, you know, inside of that, and so there's, at least for me, throughout my life, the water has been a profound healer, profoundly healing to me, and necessary for me. You know, everyone's okay the way they are. We're all wired differently, but for me, that's been so essential. So it's just, yeah. Thanks for sharing that aspect too.
Also, felt the song, it's like when you said the, I think her name is Carol or Carolyn, that emotions are all equal. And sometimes I think in colors with emotions or feelings. And like the song I felt had kind of a blue kind of nighttime, but like a kind of a more cooling blue, not like fresh, bright morning water, more like, quiet afternoon or early evening. And so, like, I don't know, for me, I'm a highly like sensitive little baby over here, and it helps so much to talk about this because it's so easy to be absorbed in the judgment of the emotion. Oh shit, that bird just flew into the window, but it flew away, so it's okay. um, um but yeah, I wanted to, yeah, just comment on that because it helps. Something happens for me. I'm just going to speak about myself because it's just easier. Um, but especially with grief or something else, because it does feel big and because it does come back. And it is sometimes for me feels like I freeze. I get stuck. I'm like a massive glacier ice cube. And I'm like, I don't know when this shit is about to melt. But I hope global warming is going to happen on me because I need this. The grief is so big, not on the earth, me. Um, but just the being okay with I'm trying to just communicate something. Sometimes words are hard for me, but I know what I'm trying to say, something around um that like the ocean or the water to me is like the vastness. You could handle any grief because grief is just a thing that we're labeling as separate from the rest of life, and an emotion that we're labeling as separate, and then we're putting a value on it and a hierarchy and a caste system and a nobody wants to go live in the desert and we all want to live in Hawaii, you know um type of thing, but we live on this whole planet which has everything. And so it helps me to talk and hear everyone speak because it decentralizes my shit. And but also that it reminds me that like I care to have a depth of feeling. I care to be able to be in the water and feel all of it. If the water is the feeling of things, but the weather just keeps changing, I want to be in the water to feel it. And so that's I want to say like maybe there is a strength to grief because it creates a depth of feeling that's possible. Because I do have to say I've dealt with a lot of death and grief, and you can have grief in different ways. It's not just from people dying,
Mm-hmm.
but that I feel a joy in myself that I have sometimes felt makes other people sad that haven't necessarily experienced like depth in their life or something. And I'm not trying to judge. I've had people come up to me and say, "I wish I could feel as deeply as you." And I'm just saying this because I think it's healing to hear the way you. There's nothing wrong with the way you feel, and it gives you the capacity to feel that with anything, including a butterfly.
Mm.
So I just yeah.
Oh, so absolutely. That's one of the things I love about you is I know you can feel so deeply, and it's one of your superpowers, And it's like when I feel that in you, I feel that part of me is healthy and validated and unjudged because it's that bravery to just arise as you are in the depth of what you feel, and it is an act of maybe not defiance in particular. That's not why we did it. We can't help it, but it's an act of bravery and an act of generosity to share our full humanity. And, I think my father taught me this again and again. He didn't shy away from being fully how he was, and he unshamed that for me, and it was for many people. And it was always surprising because I was worried when he would get into his emotions that people would freak out, and mostly they didn't, so that's really powerful. But it is rare and it is brave and it is vulnerable to be who we really are. And it's like when we do that, we do give other people permission to do that, to be who they really are.
And in the
It is
lyrics, oh, sorry.
no, I was just saying it's an empowerment. What were you gonna say?
Oh, my bad. I hope I didn't interrupt.
No, Not at all.
But in the lyrics, it was saying that you're safe. Like that's what I mean. I'm still learning this, and I can have it with some people, but I also need to know that they feel safe inside of themselves, so that like I'm not going to tell everybody the story of how my mom died,
Right.
because I know some people that shit is not even going in the ears. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but there's other people I could tell them and I could like cry, or there's some people I could just tell part of the story but not the details, and this feeling safe thing, it's like there is some fucking magic in that, because then there really is no problem.
Yeah.
As long as we're following this line of like, I'm just going to be honest, like I've experienced very deep depression in my past, but I'm not going to kill myself. I'm pretty clear on that in my life, but I know that we as human beings have dealt with even that extreme of emotion and acted on it, and I get it. So it's like, as humans in our time, and I'm sorry if this has triggered anybody, because that was not my intention. My intention was just to outline this if we have a safe container, that's why therapy can be helpful, or just a good friend, or someone special, a dog, a cat, whatever, even nature. But it's the feeling safe, so that it can be that in the lake, in the water, and you can feel safe, not like a shark or a alligator is gonna, you know, or you could feel safe enough that I don't know. Anyways, there's something around that. And last thing, because I don't mean to dominate the conversation, is just this. I want to learn how to feel safe with my emotions around people in a way that it doesn't. There's that line, that real line around what I was just talking about. Feeling a depth of emotion that makes you want to be out of your body,
Yeah.
and then also feeling safe to express it, but in a way that doesn't feel like I am. I don't know how to explain it. Like I'm not dumping it
Yeah.
for
No,
you to deal with, so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I am dealing with it, and this is what I'm going through. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how, so
I know exactly what you're saying. You're a self-resonating tuning fork. We all are. Like you're a sympathetic string on a sitar. Where they don't get touched, but when they're tuned so that when a string is played that there's near their vibration, they just start going. Zzz, they start making noise. We're all like that, and you're a fine-tuned instrument. And so when you are feeling your feelings, the tuning fork, the sensitivity instruments, like Lynn was saying, that's the discerning quality, the discriminating wisdom awareness, where you feel someone, you feel yourself, and you're like, yeah, no. Like it's not even a decision. You're just like, I know I'm safe. Nope, they can't. I can already feel they're not. Or, there is a no. You know. But you don't know if you can't handle your feeling, you can't really feel it. And if you can't feel it, you can't also include them. And then you don't have the sensitivity. And then if you try to do something, it's like you're walking blind. You might run into something or hurt somebody, knock someone down. So it is about that sensitivity. That's that crazy paradox I'm talking about of being able to feel yourself as how you feel others. It's the exact same instrument. So, and I just also want to unshame suicidal ideation further. I just want to, Carla McLaren, this amazing woman who said, no positive or negative emotions, right? She also said that suicidal ideations are messengers that something needs to die in your life, or something is dying in your life. It doesn't mean that you should harm your body, and I personally don't want anyone to do that, and I don't, obviously, but when I was going through my divorce and listening to this song, I got to tell you that for me, sleight of hand, jump off the end, that was about suicide for me too. But not suicide like I'm going to kill myself. It was more like I'm dying. I was literally already dying. And the question is, was I going to jump into the water or not? But it's like, you're already dead. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't quite, but for me, it really was that. So the spectrum of suicidal ideation to I want to die, or I'm dying right now. I want to go with that process. Isn't that interesting? Where do you parse which color turns into which color. No, it's an infinite spectrum. And in action and condensing and eclipsing and acting on harming oneself, of course, the sad thing about that is it doesn't even accomplish what one intended. One arises outside of their body and goes, oh shit, nothing has been solved. Fuck, that sucks. So that's why it's not a solution. But the thing is that instinct is so natural. And I feel like we're afraid of talking about it or like saying that we have those feelings. I used to be more, now I'm not afraid of saying it. I have suicidal ideation. It happens and I'm okay with it.
That's such a powerful, beautiful, to me, layer of like getting to the wisdom of something, of like what needs to die or what is dying, what has died.
Right. What's the message here? Not the literalism, but the literary quality of like, wait, well, this is coming up because it's this message of like, this no longer works. This part of me can no longer be that part of me died. Part of me has died, no doubt. It did die. Yeah, gonzo. It was already dead. So the question is, I can live in denial, which is so torturous, to pretend that part of me could still be alive. But that part of me depended on my partner wanting to be with me, which she did not. And so that's when I died. And then I was like a ghost for a while. It's like, maybe it'll change. She'll change her mind. Maybe I'll figure it out. And it's like, no, you're dead, dude. You're a ghost. So that's extremely painful. But something about non-judgmentality, because when someone else can just feel how bad it is for us at that moment and not put any fucking frosting on it, not do anything to it, just be like, yes, it's absolutely awful. It's as bad as you think it is. And they don't even say that because you don't need to hear it. But they can just be with you and you feel them feeling you. In that moment, it's okay to be broken. I'm not broken. I'm broken. But it's okay to be broken. And part of the battle inside of us is not wanting to feel we're broken. Because our conscious mind is like, fuck, I can't operate. I won't hold down the job. I'll die. I'll lose. So our defense mechanisms, and when we're children, we literally just can't go there. We black out. And even with traumas, like I've had, and many of us have had, where we go through the blackout process. You don't even remember it for a long time sometimes. That's real. That was great survival. Thank goodness my body's smarter than I am. But so that's a good thing that we black out when that way. But when we're in this interesting place where we can kind of, and during that period, I had like basically a low level continuous panic attack for, it seemed maybe a month or so, where it would highlight more or less, especially when I was in the house where I'd been living with my partner and I hadn't yet moved out. I literally felt like I was claustrophobic in wide open space in the house. It was the most scary thing. It was like, oh my God, I cannot stop this. And I am fully resting, by the way, in my nature, which was even scarier because I'm like, wait, it doesn't help. I'm totally in my empty luminosity. I was fine that way, but I was just feeling claustrophobic in that. And I was like, this is weird. Am I doing something wrong? No. That's not what practice is for. Practice doesn't erase our emotions. That's not, and that we do have this weird stoic assumption in our culture that if we get really good at practice, we won't feel anything anymore. We'll be above it all. And Trungpa Rinpoche said very clearly, no human being has removed their emotional system and been a functioning human being afterwards. It is impossible. It's not the goal. It's not what the Buddhas do. It's not what the Bodhisattvas do. It's not it. But we fantasize that Mandela, oh, he was above it all. Mandela looked at ants in his cell all day for a long fucking time to stay alive. He watched them move and he watched them circle and he became friends with them and he went into their world to survive. That's a warrior. He was not surviving, and the ants helped him. We idealize in all the wrong ways. We should idealize how deeply horrified he was that he was imprisoned in confinement and in torture, and that his brilliance was that he moved into the realm of ants and nature, and he became whole through a practice of, but not through, oh, he never felt anything. He was fine the whole time because he's above it all. So anyway, I'm so hoping that we can keep in mind that it's a violence that any teacher that allows people to believe that they can remove their emotions, I believe that is a violence towards their students. And it's dangerous, and it has created enormous harm. And anyone who exemplifies or exceptionalizes their equanimity, I call bullshit. Because it's not that you can't feel great equanimity, it's not the fucking point. The point is, can you feel the depth of suffering of humanity and not shut down? That's what's called compassion, and it takes wisdom to do that. And if you're in some fantasy land where you don't feel anything, you haven't accomplished great compassion. You haven't accomplished Mahakaruna, and you don't have great wisdom. You just have a little hiding place. It's escapism. It's possible to do that to some degree for a while. But that's what Trungpa meant. That's not a functioning human being. You're not in the world having a relationship, caring and being and still giving a shit. You're like, oh, I'm above it. Which you can do that. There are many realms. Go ahead, pick a facet. Just don't pretend it's the whole jewel. And what we're talking about is the whole jewel practice, which is you don't structure your being in any way to restrict the flow of reality, which includes the levels of grief that can be felt are unfathomable. But when we feel them, as Lori was saying, we just realize we're part of everything more and more, and we get bigger, and the feeling's still there. We grow. We don't need to shut it down. And it's nonlinear. That's another thing that's crazy for our Western minds and our exceptionalism and our idealization of the path. We think, oh, if I do enough grieving, if I do enough therapy, if I do enough, retreat, I'll get through this faster. And I am guilty of this. I tried to do this and it didn't work. And I kept running into this thing with my therapist, like, why am I not over? I've been doing constant work. And she was just like, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You do what you can. It is its own life. That's why I'll call the grief a deity. It's like, excuse me, I'm not your servant. I don't go by your beck and call. I have my own reality that I'm shining. You can relate to me or not, but you're not in control. You're a participant in this. We are participants in reality, in true nature. And I love that line because to me that helps clarify that we don't have to micromanage. We couldn't. And it's a conversation with reality. It's like, what can I feel today? And as Janet, you were saying earlier, the different layers of grief that you can feel once you've felt one, or Lynn, I think you were also saying that, that this sense of, okay, I've done this. And then another thing is like, hello, I am level 14. You're like, oh shit. All right. Hi, level 14. You're in control again. I don't like it, but what do you got for me? They're like, well, you didn't feel this. It's like, oh shit. And we wonder why people self-medicate, why there's so much addiction, why there's so much of this going on in our society and our world, why there was an opioid crisis, because people are trying to deal with what they can't deal with alone. It's a miscategorization. It's categorically out of touch with reality. We can't do it alone, and we do, and we can do it, and we have to do it alone. That paradox is two hands together. but we also do it together and alone. You know, we are alone together. It's all mixed up. Now I'm not making any sense anyway. All right, I'll stop paradoxing.
Okay, good. I'm going to give you one. I just drew in my little journal a picture of Nick as Indiana Jones when that huge boulder's coming at him of emotions. Ah!
Yes. And thank goodness for my mobilization system to get me out of the boulder if I could, so I don't get crushed. And then later I can go, wait, what was the message there? What is this? What was that like? Can I feel that? Yeah.
Can we see the picture?
Yeah. I love it. Mm.
You have also talked about, not recently, but like a few years ago, I remember you talking about, I don't remember if it was a specific emotion or just emotion, as being like, it's like this freight train is coming through your house, or the house, your body. And that's kind of what it feels like. There's a train track at the end of our street, and it, like, sometimes the house shakes. My pictures are all kind of
I think you're tapping into what we're doing with the gestures. You know, in this training, we're training the subtle body. And the subtle body is our superpower. It's our spirit. It's our deity as us. And so each thing that we're doing is training the subtle body, because the subtle body can handle anything. It is the nature of reality. It is clear light itself. It is the jewel and all of its facets. That said, we're also working with our relative psychology, because they're not two separate things. But when we work with the subtle body and opening up the channels and feeling the sense of embodied, spacious clarity and light and bliss and all these things we're working on with these gestures, we're actually training our nervous system and our subtle body and our emotional subjective experience to be able to have enough resources, enough martial arts katas to know how to deal with different situations and come back to safety, come back to inspiration, come back to full-heartedness. It's not about forcing anything, and it's not about having an agenda. It's just we're working with the plumbing directly, and then, you know, we're working directly with the energetic wiring. And along with that, we're working with the personal aspect of what's coming up in that wiring. Again, it's not what comes up, it's how we work with it. That's the magic of the path. So grief is one of those things that often gets sidelined, even in Buddhist sanghas. You know, honestly, I know, Kathy, if you're watching now, you were an inspiration, but I know you couldn't make it today, but, you know, because Kathy has had a question recurring as more of a rhetorical, but as well as a dialogue with me about, why do the Buddhists not have more teaching on grief? And, you know, there's this whole thing of non-attachment. We talked about that last weekend, attachment and bonding and the difference, right? And I think here, there is a misunderstanding that happens in a lot of Buddhist sanghas, where it's easier to have people project exceptionalism on a teacher and for them to say, yeah, you can get through all that, and here's your carrot, and come along, right? But that's not the truth. The truth is much wider and deeper and more crazy and interesting. And the truth is that all emotions are the true nature manifesting that way, and there's nothing wrong with them. And there's a way to be fully feeling, fully human, fully being what we are, and have that also be known as the Buddha, as our true nature. There's not two different things going on here. There are different paths, there are different instructions at different levels. We're giving a very, I would say, mature presentation that says, you know what, we live in a culture where we know about emotions, we know about modern psychology. We're very sensitive to how we've been conditioned in our culture. It's different from the Asian instructions and cultures. We're kind of modifying that. But I think it's so important that just every step of our journey together, we question and challenge the assumptions we were raised in and the ways we even understood Buddhism. Because actually Buddhism, for me, the Buddhist teachings I'm working with, the Tantric methods and the Mahayana methods of that emotions are wisdom. Okay, that's what they say, right? It's not that they need to be get rid of, or we have suppressed them, or we annihilate them, or we cut off, we snuff out the flame. None of that. That's the Hinayana. Here, what we're doing is we're actually saying, no, wisdom is emotion. Emotion is wisdom. How do we understand it then? How do we work with it? And that's why I talk about metabolizing and seeing them as deities. Because if we start to respect that any exceptionalization we do, that an emotion arising indicates something that's gone wrong in our practice, that's immediately a red flag to me, because it doesn't understand the nature of wisdom. Right away, it's a lower view. It's not profound co-emergence. It's, oh, that's a relative phenomena, and you want to suppress that or control that, or there's no need. Again, it's not what comes up; it's how you work, how you see it. That's the true freedom. It's not, oh, I can't feel sadness. Then the Buddhas would have no compassion. The Bodhisattvas would be blind. They'd be searching in the dark. They wouldn't be able to feel us. That's not how it is. But there's a lot of forces, even in religion, especially even there, you could say, that want to make things exceptionalized and empower people. Because the real empowerment is who you are, fully. So there are teachings on grief in Buddhism, but there is a reframing here, because they were in a collectivist culture. Their ceremony and ritual and holding grief was a tribal necessary. It's absolutely normal. You didn't even have words for it. It's just the way I say with Tibetans, didn't talk about nature. What do you mean nature? What else is there? What do you mean feel? So there's different ways that there's cultures evolve differently when different things are in place, and you can't just translate that, right? You can't. Those are totally different conditions. So for our practice together as a Sangha to know that grief is a sign of compassion, it's a sign of wisdom. It doesn't need to go away. It may never go away. Our relationship to it will change. And this is that profound instruction. Trungpa Rinpoche asking Setchen Kongtrul's Rikuru when he was 9 or 8, does pain ever go away? And Setchen Kongtrul says, no. But your relationship will change. That's my lineage, that's our lineage, that's our practice. Do you see how different that is from, of course we work with grief. How could you know?
You're frozen, Nick.
I don't know if
You're frozen.
Reminding us that our grief is frozen at times.
I died.
You're frozen still again.
some dedication of merit. If you can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm back. So in this dedication of merit, we'll just shine all of the bravery and wisdom deities of all of our emotions out in all directions. And may all beings get the transmission directly from the Dwala and deities of emotions, that all emotions are messengers and all feelings are valid and have wisdom.